long time no see, everybody. I think it's been about 5 months since my last video, which honestly it feels like an absolute lifetime. I think it was back in the spring that I last created something for YouTube. So yeah, I'm probably going to be very rusty today, so please just go a little bit easy on me if the video quality isn't quite to where I would usually have it. I've kind of forgotten what I'm doing really. I think the last video, yeah, it would have been April, May sort of time, and I first started doing YouTube in 2017, so quite some time ago. And in all of that time, this is the biggest break that I've ever taken away from video creation at all. And to be honest, I'm really glad I took the break. I needed it, I really did. And to cut a long story short, 2021 has personally been a bit of a shite year for me, and I just haven't been in the right headspace to create this content at all. And I'm never going to force myself to create these videos, never ever, because I think it's apparent to the viewer if the person actually doing the filming doesn't enjoy it and isn't passionate about it. So I'm never going to come out and force myself to create these videos. I have to feel it inside. I have to feel that desire. And today, I'd say, is the first day in a very long time where I've actually felt like coming out and creating something. Hence why I'm here right now. The summer months that you've missed, well, let's be honest, you haven't really missed that much. Summer is probably my least favourite time of the year, and I wasn't that active with the camera. I did manage to get a few nice shots that I'm quite pleased with. So what I'll do before we get started with today is, quite quickly, I'll just put up on screen for you in a moment the shots that I managed to capture over the last few months. That will just let us sort of catch up with each other before we proceed with today. As you can see, I didn't really have that much of a productive summer because I don't really have that many images to show for the last sort of 4 or 5 months. But to give myself a little bit of credit, I think I did manage to get some nice shots, and I'm quite pleased with it, considering my photographic confidence hasn't been particularly very high lately. So I can take some encouragement from that, I think. Today, it's very much feeling like autumn, and we're going into traditionally my favourite time of the year, autumn through to winter. It's those two seasons which I absolutely adore. And today I've come to a location called Faulty Will. It's a location that I've done many videos at before. It's probably my favourite photographic location on the Isle of Man. Taken so many images around here, and it's looking fantastic today. We've got all of this beautiful bracken here, and it's really starting to turn that nice sort of orange. There's a whole mixture of colours in here. We've got the greens, oranges and yellows, and it just looks absolutely beautiful when the light comes in and really lights it up. And the trees aren't starting to turn just yet, but I really think the bracken in itself could really lend itself to some great autumnal shots in this area. So we've got about 2.5 hours till sunset, and the sun is going to set over this direction. So I'm going to work a relatively small area, probably about, I don't know, 300 meters by 300 meters. It's relatively small. I'm going to wander around this area and see if I can pick out any potential compositions that I think will work well with the setting sun out that direction. It's now been nearly 2 years since I've last left the Rock or the Isle of Man. And the interesting thing is that during the first phase of the pandemic, I couldn't practically leave because of border restrictions and quarantining and all of that stuff. But now I am able to actually leave the island and go travelling, you know, pretty much wherever I want. However, the interesting thing is, at the moment I'm choosing not to, and that's because I'm having such a good time actually photographing the island. And I have come to the conclusion that in the last sort of 2 years, my photography has really benefited from being stuck here. I've had to work harder for my shots. I've had to get to know my landscape a lot better and understand lighting and the season changes and the topography of this landscape. And I think it's really taken my photography to another level. And I've honestly learnt more during this pandemic period than I had in the 10 years prior to that. And this location is a great example of that. There's loads of these old ruined buildings, and here on the Isle of Man we call them Fultons, and I find them endlessly fascinating. I never ever tire of taking shots of them, and these particular ones here don't really resemble buildings at all. They're pretty much just piles of rubble, but I find they're just so atmospheric, and this valley is absolutely strewn with them. And I think there's a few in this area that really hold a lot of photographic potential today. I have found a few lone trees kind of nestled in amongst the bracken, but the lighting just isn't working for them at the moment. The lighting is just a little bit nondescript. I need a particular type of lighting for those kind of shots. So I'm starting to feel that these buildings, these Fultons, are where the photographic potential lies today. So I'm going to spend a little bit more time just wandering around them and see what I can find. I've actually found 3 or 4 compositions in this area that I think hold a lot of potential. However, you may have noticed the lighting is absolutely pants at the moment. I don't know where all this cloud has come from. It really wasn't forecast, but it's absolutely killed the light stone dead at the moment. So frankly, as things stand at the moment, I don't think I'm going to be getting any shots unless this cloud blows through and our lighting comes back. And I'm hopeful that will happen because it is forecast to be that way. So I'm hoping that this is only sort of very temporary. Now, I have set up my tripod and camera right next to me in the anticipation that lighting is going to come back. More sort of like a hope, please. Because I think there's a nice composition just behind me here that with the right lighting conditions I think could work quite well. As I was walking in earlier, I spotted this in the corner of my eye, and I thought it held a lot of potential with a setting sun behind it backlighting the scene. I don't know whether I was onto something earlier because it's difficult to see now because obviously the lighting is gone, so I could have been barking up the wrong tree, but I do think there is something here. So I'm going to basically sit by this camera and wait. I'm going to try and talk you through my composition here as best I can. It looks pretty lame on the back of the camera, but trust me, I think there's something here. So you can see on this side of the image, we've got our lone Fulton ruin, and there's kind of like a solitary tree right next to it. And I'm going to position that on the rule of thirds intersect on this side of the image. And then on the other side of the image, to provide a little bit of balance, about here there's a lone hawthorn tree as well. So those actually create nice sort of mid ground in this part of the scene here. And then In my foreground, you can see there's a dry stone wall that runs right across the front with a nice sort of gateway here. So that's a really nice foreground, and I think, and the gateway sort of leads the eye through into the midground, and particularly with this diagonal wall here, it provides a nice connection between what's going on here and in this mid area, I think. And what really caught my eye before is the sun is going to set probably about here, just behind these hills. So it should produce some lovely backlighting to this scene. And I think with the right lighting, this could look really, really spectacular. Obviously, it looks pretty lame at the moment and very flat and boring. But I'm quite optimistic that we could be on to a nice shot here. And I can actually see that the clouds are starting to part a little bit. So we might be on to something here. You can see that the weather forecast was right, and we're starting to get some beautiful light breaking through. It's not quite there, but it's not far off. And this is why it's always important to trust the weatherman. They get it right more often than wrong in my experience. Now, this shot behind me is all about the backlighting, and you can see the kind of effect that it's going to create. The sun is still getting snuffed out a little bit by the cloud, but I'm confident it's going to break through here, and I might only have a window of time of a minute or two to get this shot, but I do think it's there for the taking. Settings wise, I'm shooting this at about 60mm, about f11 to give me front to back sharpness. I'm shooting it using the 24-70 f4 on the Z7. Focus wise, I'm focusing in on the mid ground of the shot, which I think is the right sort of place to ensure that I get nice sharpness all the way through the scene here. Shooting at ISO 64 to maximize my dynamic range. Shutter speed is largely irrelevant because there's not really any movement that I'm looking to wield within the actual shot. I probably will bracket this, so a 1 or 2 stop underexposure bracket, just to protect the highlights in the back of the scene there. But to be honest, with this kind of shot, this kind of, I'm trying to create like a washing effect of light coming in from the back of the scene. I don't really care too much if significant portions of the actual sky are blown out entirely, so it doesn't matter too much. But I'm just going to do the bracketing anyways because it doesn't really hurt, and then I can make my mind up in post-processing. But I think I'm going to have to get back to the camera because I'm going to have literally seconds to get this shot. I'm really pleased how this shot turned out. It's a fantastic example of how good lighting can transform a scene very rapidly. The key is super quick reactions out in the field, or to preempt the changing lighting. I absolutely love the backlighting behind the skeletal tree and the way the light is selectively washing across the hills and the backdrop. I feel I got lucky with this one. But that's a wrap for today. See you all next time, whenever that is.